everybody, my name is Josh and welcome to the National Day of Volunteer Youth Ministry Training. We are recording this in the middle of a pandemic. And so I decided to just take matters into my own hands and I'm gonna do the entire training as a selfie video. Now here's the thing, I've got about 10, 12 hours of content, but it's gonna be awesome. Your first lesson is on TikTok and I've got some sick dance moves.
Josh!
What?
Come on up here, I've got the cameras up here, let's go!
Oh, all right.
Hey everybody, I'm Doug Fields and I want to welcome you to Download Youth Ministry's National Day of Volunteer Youth Ministry Training, which technically is the longest title in the history of titles. And this day is dedicated to celebrating and equipping you, the real heroes of faith, the volunteers. Josh, I was just welcoming all the volunteers.
Oh, I'm telling you what, I kind of feel like a hero too right now. I had to hold my arm up and I'm willing to do that. Like Moses in the wilderness, as I take the selfie
We're not
video.
even a minute in and we've got a Bible homeschool joke.
Well, here's the deal. Everyone has a little bit of homeschool experience right now. Curse you, coronavirus!
Hey, we should probably address that. We filmed this ahead of time. We live in Southern California, and this is at our church, and California was hit hard by the virus, so we're doing our social distancing thing, and when this actually shows, we don't know what condition your state's gonna be in, what condition your church is gonna be in, or Josh, if you and I are even gonna be alive.
Well, here's what we know. If you're watching this, you're alive, and that's a good thing. We recorded this ahead of time, one, because we don't trust the internet in your youth room or church or your home, and it's cheaper that way.
That's right, and we also don't trust ourselves not being able to edit stuff out, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. I mean, we wanted the opportunity to edit out any bad words and any poor theology. Really, we've been to a lot of your churches and youth rooms, and the basement where you meet, it doesn't have good internet. And as odd as it may sound to you, it's really true. We just want to make sure you have a great experience. So we've solved that problem and made it easy for your host to just push play and sit back and learn. Plus, it was marvelous last year.
Yeah, well, speaking of last year, welcome back to those of you who are one of 20,000 volunteers who joined us last year in over 200 locations.
Amazing.
Today, this is going to be shown in over 400 sites, and our prayer is that we're going to reach up to maybe 30,000 volunteer youth workers just like you. And speaking of you, this day is really all about you. It's you, the volunteer small group leader, the Sunday school teacher, the bus driver, the camp counselor, the camp nurse. I don't know, you're part of the armed forces.
We call the armed forces, the security in our youth ministry, we call them the lust busters. They go around with flashlights and look in the bushes, make sure nobody's making out.
Well, whatever you're called or whoever you are, if you're part of youth ministry to teenagers, we like you and we're grateful for you. This is gonna be a day of sharpening your skills, having some great conversations, a lot of laughter, and learning from really some of the best minds in youth ministry.
And Kara Powell is here too.
Josh, she's smarter than both of us combined.
Oh, that's so true. And as Doug, you mentioned earlier, we're coming to you from our church, where Doug and I do youth ministry together every week. In this very room, we teach teenagers God's word, we develop relationships with them, and we care for their parents. That's what we do here. And we're also part of a little company called Download Youth Ministry, where we get to serve youth workers like you.
Yeah, and so we want to thank you for taking some really valuable time out of your schedule to be better equipped to care for the teenagers that God has entrusted to you. We actually believe that when you are a learner, you become a better leader. And that's why we're so glad that you're here today, because we think you're going to benefit greatly. And as an end result, your students are going to benefit with you being a more effective leader.
Absolutely. Did you know, Doug, we've got people joining us from locations all across the United States. 47 states are represented, which is awesome. I'm not sure what happened to New Hampshire. Kind of just bailed on us.
Very liberal.
Absolutely. Hawaii, I get it. They're out surfing, they're juggling pineapples, they're eating Spam for breakfast, I get it. We're also in many Canadian states as well.
John, they're not called states, it's Canada.
Oh, no.
For those of you from Canada, I am so sorry for him being so insensitive, eh? They're called territories. Everybody knows that.
That is on me. I did not know that. There's also a couple of locations in England and New Zealand. Next year, we should actually call this the International Day of Volunteer Youth Ministry Training.
I like that. No matter where you're from, We are so glad that you're here. Now, Josh, let's do something we like to do.
Yeah.
Give away some prizes.
I'm so in. Now, Doug and I have built Download Youth Ministry on fun and prizes, and we're gonna turn to the screen right now and our Sidekick.tv app, and we're gonna give away pizza to an entire state.
To an entire state. Every church in that state that is participating.
I love it. Let's do
gets
it.
3, 2. I saw Saskatchewan.
Oh, good job.
Yeah.
Another territory, right? That's great.
Territory. That way, Josh.
3, 2, 1, stop.
Guam.
Excellent.
Guam is our big winner.
Nice.
And Josh, I actually think Guam is a territory.
Ah, maybe they're in Canada as well? I
Yes,
don't know.
they are.
That's
Yes, they
awesome.
are.
Well, listen, let's spin another one, and hopefully we can get a better one here. 3, 2, 1, stop. South Dakota. That was perfectly timed. I love it. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's conveniently rigged to make sure that we didn't have a big state like Texas. Sorry, y'all.
Hey, throughout the day, please be sure to use the hashtag DYMTrain when you use social media. In fact, take a selfie with the people around you right now and post it so that we can see you. Right now, we're gonna show you some awesome shots from last year that you can try to outdo. That's
Yeah,
cool.
and we've made it real obvious. It's right there all day long. Hashtag DYMTrain.
Doug, I'm impressed you even know what a hashtag is. Okay, Boomer. All right.
I started my youth ministry career in this very location in 1981. In 4 decades of youth ministry, I can assure you that a lot of things have changed, but there's one constant that hasn't changed, and that's the power of a caring adult who's decided to follow Jesus into serving a few teenagers and loving them when really a lot of people in the church don't even like being around teenagers. And I'm excited for you to meet one of our volunteers.
Thank you.
We work here together. Her name is Danielle. She's 82 years old, and she works with our middle school students. And she's not a famous speaker. She hasn't written any books, but she is amazing.
She is amazing. You will also hear from people who have a global platform and are considered the thought leaders in youth ministry. We've got Dr. Sean McDowell, author, world-class apologist with us, Mark Ostreicher, a youth ministry legend, talking about the 2 ways to be a fantastic youth worker, Dr. Kara Powell, we joked about her earlier, but she's incredible. She's the author of Sticky Faith, the head of the Fuller Youth Institute, and an expert on teen anxiety and depression. We're bringing in a UFC legend.
That's right.
We've got you,
excited about
me, and Jessica Sanchez here with fun surprises all day long. It's gonna be a great day.
Yeah, so lean in, grab some Twizzlers and a pen, and let's enjoy our time together. Josh, why don't you open up this whole thing in prayer, and then I'll introduce our first speaker, and we'll jump right in.
Sounds great. Let's pray. God, thank you for every youth worker gathered all across the country, all across the world. Just ask you bless us today. Help us to be inspired, filled with laughter, encouragement. Help us to be better youth workers when we're through our time today. God, I'm excited about what you have for us today. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. And I'm excited to introduce to you our very first speaker. She's one of the best youth workers I know. Her name is Heather Fleece. She's the junior high pastor at Wooddale Church in Minnesota. She's been there for over 20 years. She flew in today to be here with us. She's an author, a tremendous speaker, a trainer. We wouldn't want to do the National Day of Volunteer Youth Ministry Training without her. She's a champion arm wrestler. She's beat Josh twice, never me, only because I don't want to lose my limb. So ladies and gentlemen, buckle up and welcome the strongest woman I know, Heather Fleece. Heather, I've got
Oh, thank you. Yes.
6 feet.
Okay, good. I won't touch it.
All right.
Strongest woman he knows. I'll take that label anytime. Hey, youth leaders, I'm so excited to be with you. And I'm so excited to help you understand that you've got a lot of choices as a youth leader. I mean, think about it. Do you want to choose to work with middle schoolers, high schoolers, or both? If your youth pastor gives you a little cash to spend on your cabin kids, do you want to buy them bandanas or tie-dye or foam swords? If you've got to order pizza, Domino's, or Papa John's? When you're at small group, do you feed them the food before the lesson to get them in kind of a comatose state, or at the end as a little bit of a motivator? If you're choosing Oreos, do you choose double stuff or mega stuff? Now notice I didn't even say regular stuff because regular stuff is of the devil. When you're sleeping in a cabin, are you gonna sleep with that bar in your back all night long, or are you gonna take that mattress and throw it on the floor? Leaders, you've got lots of choices. But I believe that there's one choice that will make or break your ministry. So imagine that you're talking with a group of girls and they start talking about a boy who's really cute in the group. Ladies, you know that you will receive automatic cool status if you join that conversation and you affirm their choice. Or imagine you're hanging out with a bunch of boys and they're planning a major prank at summer camp, and you come in with the idea of adding saran wrap and whipped cream to the mix. Guys, you are automatically next level. But I would argue that in both of those cases, you have put yourself into a category that will be really hard to get out of, the category of a friend. Now, as a friend, they may chant your name, they may beg to have you as their cabin leader, or they may offer you up as a living sacrifice to the dance competition at youth group, but your ministry will be stunted. Because here's the truth. Your students don't need more friends. They have enough friends. They have plenty of people to talk about the cute boys and girls with. They have plenty of people to prepare pranks with. They don't need more friends. Our kids need more leaders, more mentors, teachers, role models, champions. The biggest choice you have as a youth volunteer is to be a leader, not a friend. Now, I would guess, in theory, we all agree with this, but often in the moment, it's a really hard choice to make. So how do you make the choice to be a leader and not a friend? I have some ideas. How about don't see them as peers? I know when I'm hanging out with my 7th, 8th, and 9th graders, sometimes I start to think of them as friends. I've got kids who are youngest in their family and they just have this high level of humor or conversation or sarcasm. And I catch myself thinking they're my friend and treating them like that. They're not your friends. So don't discuss your romantic life or lack thereof with them. Don't look to them for acceptance or popularity or affirmation. Don't let them be your social life. They're not your peers. Another idea, be clear about boundaries and hold to them. So imagine you're at a retreat and the lights out have been mandated for 11:30 p.m. Have a blast up until 11:25, but then pull the reins in. Because you know, as a leader, those kids will enjoy every aspect of the retreat better if they're well rested. And you know, as a leader, that you are a happier leader if you are well rested. And let's be real, we've got some introverted, structured kids in our group that don't need a second round of the farting competition. Something else to think about? Call them out when needed. That's what a leader does, but that's not what a friend does. A friend wouldn't call someone out because they might be rejected, but a leader knows that sometimes is what needs to be done. And even though they might be upset with you for a little bit, in the long run, it's the best thing, and oftentimes they end up being thankful. A leader also speaks truth into the lives of students. Psalm 139 is one of my favorite passages in Scripture, if you can technically have one. Verses 13 through 16, David is talking to God and he's saying how amazing God is for the fact that he created all of us inside of our mother's wombs to be fearfully and wonderfully made. I know that you believe that all of your students were crafted by God. And as you look around the room and as you think about your group, you know they're so unique and they're so quirky and wonderful. Imagine if you started to speak that kind of truth into their lives, to see the qualities that God infused in them and call those out. They feel like they're being critiqued all day long. They have so much negative coming at them. A leader is able to bring the truth and to bring the positive. Now, here's the great part. If we can figure out how to do this, how to be a leader instead of a friend, kids will start to see us as friends. Let me give you an example. The last couple of weeks, we've been doing this strength training with our students via Zoom. And at the end of one session, the leader said, hey, I want you to think of people in your life who've been spiritual mentors to you. And within an hour, I received a text message from Anna, one of my 9th graders. I want to show you what it is that she said. She said, since I've been with you for 3 years, there's an endless list of things that you've mentored me in, so I'll just name a few. You've helped me grow in my faith, become a leader and a better communicator, and have always given me great advice. Thank you for pouring into me and for being such an amazing friend. Did you catch that? Thank you for pouring into me. That's a leader. And for being such an amazing friend. She loves me so much that she also put 2 hearts, Vikings colors, purple and gold. This is incredible. I'm not Anna's friend, but because I've behaved like a leader should behave, she sees me as her friend. If you're interested in the long run, if you're willing to stick around a little bit in ministry, you'll realize that a beautiful part of this choice is that you end up having relationships of depth with students when they become adults. So yes, you're closer to being peers in age now, but you have this deep layer of mentor and mentee, and it makes the relationship even more beautiful. Thor and Kelsey were both students in my ministry. That's right, I had a student named Thor. He was technically Thor 4, and he and Kelsey have gotten married, and now they are reproducing, and they have had now Thor 5. But Thor and Kelsey were both in my group, and I made the intentional choice to be their leader. Now, it was a choice because these two are exceptional, and it would have been very easy for me to see them as my friends. But I chose mentor, leader, champion. And now as they have aged and we have continued in our relationship, it's an incredible relationship. When we get together, we talk and laugh as friends, but we have this beautiful history together because I had made a choice to be a leader, not a friend. Guys, it's the choice that you have, not only today, but every day in ministry. And I hope and pray that you choose to be a leader, not a friend.
Heather, that's great. That is so great. It's perfect.
Thanks.
Perfect. I love you as my friend. I just need you 6 feet away. That was a perfect setup for the rest of the day. Way to go. Thank you very much, because that's an important point for us to be thinking about all today as you hear everything. It's like, am I a leader? Am I a friend? What does it look like in the setting that you're in? Now, here's the deal. We're going to give you several opportunities throughout our time together to talk to one another and discuss what you just heard. In a few minutes, we want you to talk through this idea of, am I a leader? Have I been more of a friend? I thought I was supposed to be a friend. What's going on? She's confusing me. What did you bring me to? But before we get you talking, we realize that some of you might find yourself in a very precarious situation. I mean, you rushed out of the house this morning to make it to church, you drank a bunch of coffee, and now you gotta pee. And unfortunately, we're not even an hour in yet, so we're not planning a pee break just yet. But if there's anybody who understands the importance of pee breaks and schedules his life around them, it's this guy right here. So know that there's one coming soon. But we're just gonna take 5 minutes to stand up, to stretch, to meet somebody. If you really have to pee, race, and then come back, and we're gonna discuss the questions on the screen. Now, here are some sounds and some imagery to help you enjoy your 5 minutes. Hey everybody, welcome back from the break. Hope it was a good
up?
break. I know I went to the bathroom.
I didn't because I'm young. I'm fine. You're good. I'm holding it.
So stupid. There's nothing to do. Go ahead.
Let's play a
Josh,
game.
What are we doing?
We're going to play a game. We're going to have some fun.
All right.
I'm going to put names of churches that are watching today, National Day of Volunteer Youth Ministry Training. You have to guess the state that the church is located
That
in.
seems like a difficult game.
Piece of cake. Are you
Okay.
kidding me? First one on the screen. Here we go. Wyoming United Methodist Church.
Does it start easy?
It's-
Because I think it would be from Wyoming, but
Yeah.
knowing you,
That's very easy.
I'm going to say
Don't miss this. Don't.
Illinois.
Good try. It's from Delaware. Delaware is the correct answer. Good job, Wyoming United Methodist Church. Next one on the screen, Orting Community Baptist Church. Orting.
Ording. It actually sounds like a pastor, Reverend Ording.
That's true. It might be named after him or her. It actually sounds like maybe the sound that a pastor would make. I'm not
When,
gonna
he,
go there.
when
No.
he or she preaches.
Ording. Where? What state?
Oregon.
Close.
I have no idea.
Washington State. Washington State. Good
See,
try.
Games are normally fun.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
You're
It's-
hurtful. All right, one more. This is Thornapple Covenant Church.
Yes.
Thornapple.
Yes,
What state?
The sister church to the Honeycrisp Community
My
Church.
favorite. Delicious church.
Gay
Thornapple. Where's it from?
Thornapple, Wisconsin.
Michigan. Good try. Love you, Thornapple. You're the best. That was good.
All right.
Do you know any other cities in Michigan?
Michigan?
Yeah. What city?
Grand Rapids.
Good job.
Lansing.
Oh my goodness.
Flint.
Yes.
You?
Detroit, Livonia, Berrien Springs, Decatur, Kalamazoo, Battle Creek.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I'm running out. Iron Mountain. Do you know Iron Mountain's in Michigan?
No, I was thinking Wyoming.
I could be making them up. You have no idea.
No, I do have.
All right, let's go. Let's play another game. We got the initials of a church. Download Youth Ministry. We do not know what the name of this actual church is, so I need you to invent.
It's kind of like in our junior high ministry when kids sign up for things and you can't read their writing. You're like, I don't have any idea.
This is the GFN Church. What does it stand for?
It stands for the Good Food Network.
Good Food
Church.
Network Church. Welcome to the National Day. All right, let's play a game with another church name. It's Epikos. Epikos? I'm not sure. What is Epikos Church?
That's going to be Greek.
And you studied Greek. You got master's
many years
degree.
ago.
You're a smart man.
Seminary, Greek and Hebrew. Don't remember either now, but Epikos means epic.
Epic.
It's
So
the
this is
epic church.
The Epic Church. I actually thought.
Why
epic-
not just call it the epic church?
Yeah, I know, right? Because you're fancy.
Oh, yeah.
Last one. I got two church names, and I think there might be a little battle going on here. We have Genesis Church and the First Church.
Well, which one is really the first?
I agree.
Church.
Maybe First Baptist would come in here with
Maybe
ready to
it's
fight.
the first church of the Apocrypha.
Could be. Maybe Genesis is Old Testament, and the first that's
Matthew.
Acts. Who study the Bible now? Hey, here's what we're gonna do. If you are from Genesis or the First Church,
Okay.
we're gonna send you a candy shower. That's right. We're gonna send tons of candy to your location, and we're gonna shower everyone in attendance with candy.
I don't even know what a candy shower is. but
You've never experienced a candy shower? Oh, they're the new rage in our junior high ministry. Hold on,
Is
hold
that
on, I'll be
right?
right back. Hold on.
A candy shower.
It goes like this.
That's good. Well, thank you, Josh. I do love Twizzlers. Hey, a little later, you're going to hear from our good friend Mark Ostreicher, which I'm personally very excited about. And last year when he was here, he totally blew us away when he talked about the teenage brain. And he said something very interesting about connecting between worship and brain development. And we want to remind you of what he said. So watch this real quick.
Right in here is this blanket between the two that's called the anterior cingulate. Come on, everybody say it with me. 1, 2, 3. Anterior cingulate. The anterior cingulate acts as a buffer between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Almost think of it as a fulcrum. On this side, we have logical and rational thought. That's the prefrontal cortex. Over here, we have the amygdala. That's the fear center. And this sexy part in the middle, that is the anterior cingulate, and it acts as a teeter-totter middle or a seesaw middle, right? In the middle. Now, here's the really cool part where it gets even more amazing. Which part of the brain of those three is dominant for you will have a huge impact on your faith. If you have a highly developed anterior cingulate, if you have a highly developed amygdala, fear-based faith. if you have a highly developed prefrontal cortex, really rational faith, but a highly developed anterior cingulate, that allows you to understand and experience God as compassionate, personal, and other than yourself. And how do we develop that part of our brain? Neurology has just recently, in the last 2 years, taught us through prayer and meditation and spiritual singing. Those are the dominant ways that we develop that part of our brain. So, stewardship again, shouldn't that be a priority in our youth ministry to help teenagers develop a daily practice of prayer and meditation and spiritual singing so that they can understand and experience God as personal, compassionate, and other than themselves?
Well, my prefrontal cortex says Twizzlers are amazing. But there are 2 reasons that we wanted you to see that. First, we want you to know that every speaker that you're going to hear today also recorded a separate message for parents. Last year, when you filled out evaluations, you said, it was so great for my volunteers. I wish you guys had something like this for parents. Well, we listened to you. And all of today's speakers created these messages that we've bundled together for parents. And Marco gave his message on brain talk, brain development, speaking to parents. So if you're interested in using any of that information in your ministry after today, the information is on the screen below. The second reason we wanted you to see that is because that clip actually sets up a conversation that we're gonna have with our worship pastor, DK. DK is the worship pastor here at Mariners Church, and our teenagers adore him, and I'm pretty biased. I think he's awesome too. And Josh is gonna talk to him about worship and teenagers. So Josh, take it away.
Thanks, Doug. That was awesome. DK, thanks for being here, dude.
Hey, man,
This is
so
great.
good being with you guys.
All right, got a few questions for you. You ready?
Yeah.
Now, I know that you're not a neuroscientist like we just heard about.
I'm a man of many talents. You never know.
That might not be one of them. That dude was smart. But I watched you lead adults and teenagers this past spring during the pandemic season, all that. What did you learn? What did you observe about spiritual singing during that time?
Oh my gosh, man. I learned a ton. Something I've always known to be true is, it's from John chapter 4, actually, when Jesus talks about how true worshipers are the ones that worship in spirit and in truth.
Yeah.
And so for me, how I kind of equated in this season was, there's the truth of what's terrible and difficult.
Right.
And the things that people are feeling with loss and pain and jobs being gone and all that stuff. Those things are true. But then there's also the truth of who God is, right? And then the spirit side of like, these are the things that I feel, right? These are the things that I feel, but there's also the presence of Jesus. The presence of Jesus in these times of storms and trials and tribulation, all that stuff. So for worship, and the fact that Jesus mentioned that worship is spirit and in truth, it made so much more sense during that time.
Yeah.
Where all these things put together, it all came together in that space of worship when we were singing out to God. And one of my mentors, Kenton Bishore, something that he's always said was, worship is a space where God's truth moves from your head to your heart. And so much of us, we like to keep things up here. We like the logic side, the knowledge side, the Greek and all that good stuff. But worship is where God allows the Spirit, His Spirit, to move in our hearts, to take the truth from our head to our heart. So that's what I saw in that season.
Totally.
During worship, through worship, all of that.
Well, and you led our church so well through that
thanks,
time.
man.
I mean, I experienced it personally as a member of our church. And so I'm thankful for the way that you led us. And I would just add to that saying, I felt a sense of peace and calm, like the scriptures that teach us, like the worship helps it come alive.
Yes.
And experience that feeling and that refreshing from the Lord. So
Exactly, yeah.
I'm just thankful as a member of the church, DK. I didn't get a chance to tell you that personally, so I'll
Thanks,
tell you
man.
now.
I appreciate that.
Right on.
Yeah,
Why is it important for adults to participate in this singing and worship and side by side with students?
Yeah.
Why is it a big deal? Like a lot of churches, they're separate, or youth group is here or whatever. Why is it important that teenagers and adults worship together?
Yes, that's so good. I think there's a kind of a dual role that we play.
Yeah.
There's of course the example that we set to our kids, and our kids follow us,
So
model
true.
things after us more than we want to admit or know about, right?
Yeah.
And so when we model worship to our kids, whether it's through singing out loud, raising our hands, our kids tend to follow. They might think that they're too cool for school, but when they see mom or dad doing that, they're gonna follow. I think the reverse is true too. The reason why it's important for us to worship with our kids is sometimes our kids demonstrate greater faith than we do.
Ooh, that's good.
You know, our kids
I like
demonstrate
that.
greater freedom than we do.
Yeah.
And so for us as adults to be reminded of that childlike faith that Jesus talks about, that's why this whole intergenerational worship thing is so important.
Yeah.
So that we get both. There's the modeling
good.
that happens both ways.
Well, I love the idea of someone today learning and going, oh, I need the teenagers to work. I need to see that freedom and that
Yes.
grace and that expression.
Yep.
It's not just me modeling it to them.
Exactly.
Although if you are a volunteer, you're a small group leader, you're being watched in your church.
Yeah.
They're watching you worship.
It's true.
Not that it's an act.
Right.
But it's certainly, they're watching our expression
Absolutely.
of faith, especially during the most difficult times.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm so glad that you said that because so many of the times we don't necessarily feel what we're singing.
Right.
And that's where that whole truth part is important because even though I don't feel these things, I don't feel like lifting my hands or singing, because the truth of who God is still real and timeless, I'm gonna sing out these truths, lift my hands in light of those truths.
So good, so good. All right, what is a simple way that adults can model for students the practices of worship?
Yeah.
Like what can adults do? We got thousands of small group leaders and volunteers watching today. How can we model and practice this in our daily lives?
Yeah, I think that's so good. I think there's a lot of things, of course. There's the who are you when no one's looking thing. It's an integrity piece, of course, right? So that it's not showtime when we come to church and, oh, it's time to lift my hands. But who are you behind closed doors?
Yeah, the real you.
Yeah,
right?
what type of relationship do you really have with Jesus?
Yep.
The other thing is in our society, in our culture, it's so important to remember the idea of space and breath and rest.
Yeah.
And when we're modeling that, when we're comfortable with space and even silence, I honestly think that allows us to respond to Jesus more readily in worship because we're used to his presence. We're used to his voice.
Right.
But when we're running and going, we don't have the space to be able to hear his voice. Yeah. We become uncomfortable with silence. We become unaware of his presence around us. So I think the practice of rest and modeling that at home is super important. And of course, when you're alone in the car, practice singing. Like sing out loud,
exactly.
Nobody's listening. When you're in the shower, go for it.
And I'm a decent singer. You're
Yes.
a great singer. And then like my buddy Doug Fields, who we both know really well, he's a terrible singer. So maybe singing, you shouldn't ever sing, even alone in the car. Don't do it. I'm kidding. DK, dude, thank you for being here. Thank you for leading our church so well, for leading me and my kids. We participated in church online during the pandemic every single week. You led us so faithfully. And obviously, we love you and your role in our church. So just want to let you know I appreciate you too. And thank you for pastoring us in this way.
Thanks
I know
so
you got to
much.
run. Thank you, dude. Very cool.
You, man.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, here's the deal. I'm actually letting DK go because we're going to try something crazy. DK and our special guest, Izzy Ray, are going to actually pause right now and we're going to sing. And I want to challenge you and encourage you to participate in the singing. Don't just sit, and I know the words will be good and you can hum along, but express your love and worship for God. I know it might be uncomfortable, but I think this could be a great moment where we reflect in both spirit and in truth. DK, Izzy, excited what you have for us today.
Let the king of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he's my song. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he's my song. You are good. Good. Oh, 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 let the king of my heart be the wind You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. No. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. No. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You are good, good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, so good. Oh.
Well, I'm so thankful for a moment of pause to worship God together is so good, and we're just getting started. And next up, I want to introduce you to a very smart person who every time I hear him speak, I think, oh, so that's what smart sounds like. It's Dr. Sean McDowell. He's a professor at Biola University, the author of several books, including Evidence That Demands a Verdict and So the Next Generation Will Know. And a lot of you know him as an apologist, but we asked him if he'd help us better understand how to disciple Gen Z, which are all the students that we're working with today. So please welcome Sean McDowell. Sean, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
I love it that you're repping a little Biola University too.
Biola and Star Wars,
There
right?
you go.
It's a great mix. Not long ago, I had a chance to speak at a Christian school and engage some students on the question of what it means to be truly free. This is a group of maybe 12 students who've been in Christian education and Christian home their entire life. They came back to me and said, the free person is someone who can do whatever he or she wants to do without any restrictions. I said, okay. Second question, if God exists, would that change the way we understand freedom in any fashion? They talked amongst themselves, came back and they said, well, if God exists, now the free person can do whatever he or she wants to do without restrictions, but now there's consequences. Now stop and think about that. According to these Christian kids, the only thing God adds to the mix of freedom is consequences, maybe guilt in this life and judgment in the next. I said, okay, so describe for me the person that is truly free. They talked about themselves, came back and said, I guess a person on an island who's totally alone and nobody restricts their freedom would be most free. Through the course of the discussion, I helped them realize that actually, ironically, the person who's alone on an island would be least free. Because the Bible says we have been made for relationship with God and for relationship with other people. You see, these young kids in a Christian home, in Christian schools, in church, had been more affected by the culture's view of freedom than by the Christian story. In fact, research backs this up. Jean Twenge, in her book, iGen, she's a sociologist at San Diego State. She said, the move away with Gen Z from religion is no longer piecemeal, small, or uncertain. It is large and definitive. More young Americans are thoroughly secular, disconnecting completely from religion, spirituality, and the larger questions of life. According to the Barna research on Gen Z and the way they define worldview, they would say that only 4% of young people today have a biblical worldview. Now let's take a step back for a second, talk about what we mean by Gen Z. The first thing to realize is we have a big challenge ahead of us in terms of those who love this generation to help them see the world Christianly. But Gen Z basically makes up about 25% of the population today. And they're roughly those, you might say, 10 to 25 years old, so upper elementary to those who are really entering the workforce. Now, Proverbs 24:3 says, by wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. Let's have the posture that says, let's start by understanding this generation so we can reach them effectively. In fact, my dad has often said to me, he said, son, it's more important to understand than to be understood. Let's try to understand these young people that God has given us the privilege to minister to. Well, here's 5 facts that'll help put this into perspective. Do you know that Ronald Reagan is as far in the past for Gen Zers as Dwight Eisenhower was for their parents? Email is an ancient and useless technology. The band Nirvana is classical rock. And you can actually find it on classical rock stations. LeBron James is a better basketball player than Michael Jordan ever was. I'm not saying that's true or false, I'm just delivering the widespread perception. And YouTubers and those on TikTok are the new stars. In fact, many in this generation believe that they're just one big TikTok video or YouTube video away from becoming famous. In fact, a high percentage of this generation want to become social media stars. That's one thing they aspire to. Now, clearly, the key to understanding this generation is that they are digital natives. They're the first generation that really has been born and raised swiping smartphones before many of them could talk or even read. In fact, teens put technology in the same category as air and water. It's not a luxury, it's a given. And here's one way I put it that might be helpful. I'm a Gen Xer, so I've learned to communicate offline. That's natural to me. I've had to learn how to communicate online. Gen Zers naturally know how to communicate online and have to learn how to communicate offline. So if the key to understanding this generation is that they're digital natives, how does this affect their worldview and relationships? Well, I think 3 key points stand out. Number 1 is technology teaches this generation that they are the center of the universe. So when I was a kid, I remember these commercials, maybe some of you remember this, about Coke versus Pepsi. It was a taste test done by Pepsi, so of course everybody preferred Pepsi in the commercials. But think about the worldview behind this. The idea was if you want a soda, you really have 2 options. You have 2 options if you want a soda. Maybe get a 7-Up, maybe get a root beer, but really there's 2 options. Well, how many options are there today? First off, you can buy your own soda making machine and have the size, fizz level, and flavor tailored just for you. If that's not enough, now you can buy a Coke with your name on it. You see, this generation has been raised in a culture that tells them they can have what they want, when they want it, how they want it, with whomever they want it. You see, this technology today, digital technology, teaches, and I use that word intentionally, it teaches young people that they are the center of the universe. You see, it's no coincidence that in 2016, the word of the year was post-truth. Now, why? Because the idea of truth is there's a reality outside of me. I discover it, and I conform my life to that external reality and truth. But technology teaches this generation, whether they realize it or not, that they can tailor reality to their own preferences and feelings and beliefs. So technology teaches this generation, in a sense, that they're the center of the universe and that it's all about the individual. The second thing I think technology does is it blurs certain boundaries that maybe could have been taken for granted in the past. So what technology does is it blurs, say, work and home, public and private, truth and fiction. In fact, we've seen this in the nature of the family. Think about family. Go back to the 80s, The Big Family, of course. The Big Family Show was a Cosby Show, how they depict family. Moving in the 90s, what do you have? You have Friends. Moving to the 2000s, and this show recently just ended, is Modern Family. See how the nature of the family has changed, and what could be taken for granted in the past is no longer true. In fact, in this generation, roughly 50% believe that gender is determined by their biological sex. That means that half of them don't think biological sex is germane to their understanding of gender. Now, a third thing that I think technology has done, and by the way, I'm not anti-technology. I love technology, and I thank God for it. There's so many positive things that technology does, but of those of us who work with this generation, we have to be very intentional and thoughtful about how it shapes their relationships and how it shapes their worldview. That's why the third thing is that technology has had a significant effect on the emotional health of this generation. In fact, we have really an explosion of loneliness, of anxiety, and of so many young people feeling overwhelmed. In fact, this quarantine from the coronavirus has actually increased this sense that screen time is not enough. My daughter's 13, and she's enjoyed FaceTiming and interacting with people during that season through FaceTime. But I think young people also realize we need to be flesh and blood present with people. You see, a digital like cannot replace a physical hug. Around 2012, when Gen Zers were first coming of age, so to speak, there was a hockey stick spike in depression and loneliness. And in her book, iGen, Jean Twenge says that this is when this generation of teenagers, the majority of them started having smartphones, which changed their fear of being left out, their idea of comparison, and changed the way they relate to one another. So friends, again, I am not anti-technology. I thank God for it. But we have to look at this generation and realize how deeply using a smartphone, and in many ways their addiction to a smartphone, shapes their relationships. So let me sum up. When we look at Gen Z, we left out things like diversity that are very important. This generation has preached diversity. But when it's all said and done, when we look at this digital generation, it's vital to realize that the smartphone in itself shapes the way they see the world. And it also deeply shapes their relationships. So those of us who love this generation, we need to build healthy relationships with them, listen to them, get to know them, love them, but also help them see the world through a biblical lens and counter some of the ideas they're being confronted with every single day.
Thanks so much, Sean. What a great session. So much to learn about Gen Z. And I love what you said about diversity being one of the defining factors of this generation as well. And I wanted to keep that conversation going with a couple of my friends. This is Mimi and Kareem. How are you guys doing?
Good, how's it going?
Thank you so much for being here. This is awesome.
Thanks for having
I wanted to have this conversation because youth leaders, this is in our culture today. This is where we're living. Maybe now more than ever, it feels like. So first of all, how are you guys? How are things going? This has been a wild ride the last few months.
Yeah.
How are you?
We're good. We're good. For me, I'm actually really digging this period of time right now because it is allowing a lot of conversations to happen, to take place, and so it's for me, it's cool. I'm really enjoying seeing so much of the interaction happening right now.
Good. Well, that's exactly part of what we're doing here. And also, we want to normalize this conversation. We don't want this to be, the culture's talking about it, and this generation cares about it. We want this to be part of all of our conversations and all of our lives. So thank you for being here today. Mimi, you've done youth ministry for a long time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. 5 years as a youth pastor, many years as a volunteer. And I know one of the concerns that has come out of our youth groups was, why aren't we talking about this at church more? Just the frustration with issues that are relevant in society not making it through those doors.
Yeah. What's we got a lot of volunteers that are watching today, all across the country, all different contexts. What's just one thing that you would share with them and say, here's something you can do to start having these type of conversations about race and the racial tensions, the violence, all of that? How can we get that conversation started in our youth groups?
Starting that conversation, I think it really begins with first caring. You have to care enough to have those conversations, to start those conversations, to listen to what's happening in the conversation. So I think it starts with caring first. I really think that needs to start with that as a basis of so all your questions and concerns and whatever can come out of a place of caring. So I think that's where it starts.
In all fairness, I feel like that's one of my big takeaways. Is it hasn't affected me. I haven't even recognized some of my privilege and status. And so for me, I've learned a ton because if I'm honest with you, I've just started to care more. And so I agree. What a great answer.
And I think that's why the response has been so big, is because people have been able to see it in a way now where it's been so in our face because of the prevalence of media, that it's almost like you have to deliberately try to ignore it in order to not see it now. And I'm glad that's happening.
Me
I
too.
really am.
Me too.
Yeah.
So we want these conversations to happen in our youth ministry, but we also want to recognize when there might be something that is racially charged or outright racist said in a small group or in a youth group. What's something that a volunteer can do to stop that, or to recognize that sentence or that phrase or that bias that has come out of a student, or maybe someone even unintentionally has said? How can a leader handle a situation like that?
You know what? I think that there are multiple ways to handle it. You know, I think it really depends on, one, your own natural personality. Like for me, I like to have fun. I'm kind of a little bit of a jokester. So if I heard a situation, naturally, you know, one way to handle it would be maybe to kind of not laugh it off as if it's not happening, but just kind of, hey, that's not where, let's redirect that. Or maybe let's kind of, it doesn't have to be, you said this, and now it doesn't have to be such a
big confrontation.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a confrontation. It doesn't have to be so, I can't believe you said that. You know, it doesn't have to be that, because then I feel like that immediately puts somebody at guard and kind of defensive, and it kind of starts to build up walls here and there. So for me personally, like there's a way that I would do it, so that it just takes some of the pressure off of the situation as a whole. But that's my own natural, like, I guess, inclination to do that. So whatever your natural personality is, I believe in being real. So whatever is real to you, that's kind of the way that you would go around going to handling it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like it. Be real, be honest, say something.
Honest, right.
But what I'm also hearing is use your personality, your gift to address what you've heard.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Right.
And my style would be a little more like, okay, so let's pause whatever the program was for scheduled for this, and now let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so where did that come from? Let's have a discussion around it. We used to have an issue in our one of our youth group meetings where we'd order food, and some of the students would go back for seconds and wouldn't necessarily wait for other students to arrive.
That would be me. Keep going. That would be me in your youth group. I'm just saying.
Hilarious. And so, you know, what we did was really made it a teachable moment around the topic of communion.
That's great.
That, like, communion wasn't just crackers and juice boxes, but it was literally a shared meal.
Yeah.
So, like, let's make this now something that we're taking it out of the Word of God and bringing it into this setting, and we're actually talking about it.
Yeah.
And we're not going to just act like it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I actually kind of like that instinctive style of leading a youth ministry, as opposed to, like, we're now going to do a series on race, and all people are creating. God created everyone in His image. Like, there's room for that, and I'm in.
Right.
So I also love it being part of the fabric of who we are.
Yeah.
That we address it, that we circle up and talk about something, that we laugh together and go, man, that was great. You know, I love that you're saying God's Spirit, as He leads you, address this issue. That's good. That's good. Why do you think the church has been silent? And I realize that's a little bit of a generalization.
Yeah.
But the church seems like it's been pretty quiet on race for too long. Why has that happened, and what can we do to change that?
You want to start, or it's okay?
I think because it's just a hard conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult, and there's no easy answers.
Yeah.
And I know the pressure of, at the time that I was a youth pastor, you have this pressure that you're supposed to have all the answers. And when you don't have them, it really disarms you, and it really just makes you feel insecure in a space where you're supposed to provide security and to provide answers. And I think that's one of the reasons why we skirt the conversation in general, is just because it's awkward, and there's not really a Band-Aid at the end of it all to say, okay, now it's all better and we can move on.
Well, and I love what you're saying. You're saying wade into the conversation, even if you don't have all the answers.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't have, like, the perfect little, like, and then it's all right.
Exactly.
That's okay. Just don't be afraid of the conversation.
Exactly.
Which I would say is even kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
I love you, known you guys for a long
Right.
time. But this is a challenging conversation.
Yeah, it is.
I don't want to make any missteps. I don't want to say anything wrong.
Right.
But I'm going to have the conversation.
Right. Yes.
And that's why we're here.
Right.
Yes.
And so I hope that we're modeling to volunteers, to youth workers today, saying this is what we want to happen.
Yeah.
Have the conversation.
Most definitely.
Add to that. Kareem, what do you got?
You know, for me, it's. I've had a lot of people, a lot of my white friends that I've had from grade school up to adulthood, that have hit me up on social media or phone calls, texts, saying stuff like, "Man, like I never really realized this before. I didn't really see what's happening. Like, man, there's so much stuff that's happening right now. I didn't realize, like, what was this like for you in school, And so when I saw that, it's amazing, because for a lot of my Black friends and family, it's something that doesn't have to be brought up as, I didn't know this was happening. It's something that we've lived our whole lives, and it's experiences that we've had through our own personal experiences, through families' experiences. And so I feel like when it comes to the church, the church is made up of people. So when you have a group of people who don't deal with that situation versus a group of people who do deal with the situation in almost like a daily or whatever type of a deal, that you now have two separate things going on. You have almost two different Americas. One experience for one group of people, one experience for another group of people. And it's almost in general. It's almost like a microcosm of just the country as a whole. Like, experience here could be different from your experience here. And so, with that, it's not easy to, like, I don't know what your experience is, and I can't really like jump into your shoes and experience that for you, or kind of, so I don't know what it's like to be you in your experience in America, or you and your experience in the church, or whatever the case is. So that's why these conversations are so important. So now you can kind of get a look into what this experience is like versus,
Well, that's the power of a small group. That's the power of that conversation. That's the power of an outside speaker coming to youth group or visiting your small group to have those testimonies and share the stories. And it's so important that you're not the only voice in their life too. And the point of we want this to end. We want it to stop. And the church and this generation, we just heard too earlier from Sean, this generation wants to do something about that. So if you had a hope or a prayer or a dream for this next generation and for the volunteers that are watching to like help shape them, what would that be? What vision would you cast? What story would you tell? What would you hope that God's Spirit would do in our volunteers and in this generation?
My hope would be that we would be that generation that would really take up the spirit and the heart of the Good Samaritan, that's been in the scriptures for all of these years, but really live that, really be intentional about bringing an end to injustice, and not just reading about it and not just praying about it, but really advocating for it, and not in a way that is necessarily political, but in a way that demonstrates the kingdom of God above all else. Having those hard conversations, asking hard questions even, and not in a way that we're so ready to defend our position and ourselves. Because I know when we enter into hard conversations, that is our natural instinct is, I have to defend my position. I have to defend, because I don't want to be labeled this way or that way. We got to lay that stuff down and really just allow it to happen.
That's good. So volunteers are watching today. They want to get this conversation started. What's just a simple back pocket question that when there's an opportunity or when there's a series or something, they can say, here's a question to get that conversation started. Do you each have one that maybe you can offer that they can literally steal right in their notebook today and take back to their small group?
That's good. I think, mine is kind of like a question and an answer, but I think it's going to help get that conversation going. And that is, what does racism look like in your opinion? I think sometimes we may sideline racism to being, being called the N-word or things like that. But systemically, what does this look like? How does this look in our policies? How does this look in our history of how we've gotten to this place in our country? Because we didn't just land here. And so I think that's important to identify, because racism is literally something that can be seen in metrics.
That's good. Really, really good. What's a question, Cream, that you would add to that conversation? What's something the small group leader can take and use next week? Get this conversation going.
You know what? I think that it might sound super simple and super cliche, but what would Jesus do? And it's such a, what would he do in this situation with that information that he just got?
Dude, it doesn't sound cliche. It sounds needed. Tell me more about that. Why is that question important? I love it.
For me, it's because when it comes to our faith, it's all based on him. You know what I mean? And so there are plenty of examples in the Bible that he's given us of what he would do in different situations, the commands he gave us, the mandates he gave us. And so a lot of these things that we're going through, we don't have to try to figure it all out on our own. Like, he's already kind of told us what to do, and he's already kind of laid it out for us what to do for as in relation to justice, in relation to oppression, in relation to the poor, in relation to the widows, in relation to
just love your neighbor as yourself.
Love your neighbor as yourself.
Couldn't be more clear.
It's
That right
that
there,
simple.
that
It's
alone.
that simple.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah, really, really good. I love that you want to get these conversations started. I want to start these I'm a junior high pastor. And so I want this conversation to start young and be part of our life and part of our youth ministries. And then it comes naturally.
Yeah.
This generation cares deeply, and we get to unlock what God is doing in their hearts by having these conversations. Don't bury it under the carpet. Don't not talk about it. Bring it up, even though it's awkward and difficult.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
Great insight today, guys. One last question. If you were to recommend a podcast, a book, just one thing, a video, whatever it might be, what would be like on this journey to learn, what would you say, like, go watch this or go read this and help our volunteers have a takeaway today?
Gotcha.
My
What's
recommendation would be Phil Vischer's video on racism. It's like a 15-minute or so.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 parts. The first part is about 15 minutes, but the way that he lays it out in terms of systems and policies and how they've disproportionately affected Black people in this country, it's an eye-opener. It really is. Good information.
It is a powerful video.
Yeah.
I watched it too going, is that true? Is that like I had no idea.
Yeah.
It's good.
I would definitely second that. Like, I feel like it's so much in that podcast, video, whatever platform it's in. There's so much in there that it's so informative.
Yeah.
And it allows you to see that we didn't just end up right here in 2020 where we are. It didn't. We just wake up and all of a sudden we're here with the issues that we have. Like, no, these things have been set in motion for years and years and years and years and years and decades and decades and decades to get us where we are right now. So it's not just a coincidence that we're here, And so there's so much information in there that could easily, fill a brain with.
How cool would it be even to like start your small group, watch the video, and talk about it? That would alone be a massive step.
Oh, yeah.
Huge. I love it.
Big time.
Thank you guys so much. This has been so good. I love that we get to have a conversation today, but we're going to actually let people have their own conversation right now about race and racism and tension and talk about questions they can share to reach the next generation and have that generation be a big part of the change. So, Kareem, Mimi, thank you so much for being here today.
Of course.
My privilege.
Of course.
Excited for your discussions as well.
Josh, you know, there's always two types of people. That one type, they want more discussion.
Oh yeah, that's me.
And then there's people who rather die than talk. So to half of you, sorry. To the other half, also sorry. Hey, before we go on our big break, let's give away some of Sean's books. He mentioned them, and here's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna go through all the hashtag DYM train, and we're gonna find a fun picture that you post in the next 15 minutes, and we're gonna do this in every time zone.
All right.
And then we're gonna choose some winners, and we're gonna send you some Sean McDowell books from Amazon.
I think it's cool, but let's take it one step further. How about this? Sean just talked about Generation Z.
Yeah.
So why don't you go through your phone and find a picture of you and someone or a group of students from Generation Z. Use the hashtag DYM train, post your pictures, tag us, all that, and we'll pick winners from that.
And you can tag us because we're also going to be tweeting and Instagramming throughout the day.
You don't want to miss the thing and find out if you win.
Ours is at DownloadYM.
I'm so proud of this guy. Use the hashtag DYM train and go enjoy your break. Here, we're going to take a picture right now. We're going to post this. Hey, smile. Hey. Ugh, there. Look at how many chins. That is not good.
3's not bad.
It's bad. All right, we're gonna take another one. Maybe when we go to break. So use hashtag DYM train and enjoy the break. You ready for another one?
Yep.
All right, here we go. All right, hold on. There we go. One chin. There you go. Nailed it.
You're a one chin wonder.
super thankful for one of our National Day of Youth Ministry training sponsors, Operation Christmas Child. It's an organization, Samaritan's Purse, that's done an incredible amount of good in the world using simple shoe boxes to give gifts and the gospel of Jesus Christ to children all across the world. Every year, my family participates, our youth group participates, and we want to invite you to participate as well.
The very first need of this community is liberation from fear. They've been worshiping water deities. We need a way of explaining Jesus liberates from fear. We've actually evangelized areas for months, but with the shoebox, we didn't know it was going to be so easy. We saw that if we are to do something in this area, then we have to start with the kids. We brought the shoe boxes across the river for the children. 1, 2, 3. Open, let me see.
Open kudo Yesu Kristo nchia viva onsosro na leke Yesu Kristo ma ucha Yesu Kristo na ba kuro nya ko nugo tawo ole bebere bena ya aba bobo mia ro kuna iwo ama kajwa yibu ko sragbe mi je plus grand voyage
le problème va solution va ba dalo que 15 mois les que yo enseignement ou que ba gbele to et attirer wa no vieux tellement avec une va ma opportunité le vis be 45 soit 50 on y présentement
que pas ne ça sera et de jona bena mi on ça sera kaka et mi pa en jam ko o ma vi le de dona grana ma bena nenane ne ma wenye mekata acha pa bekin sana Yesu Kristo.
We started this Bible study with the kids, and that has continued until it became a church.
Après mon copain bena le vieux chaone trop bagone trop et gbedeka abenye monitrice ne a le souhaité de ma former monitrice pour la doli mais doit bien quoi.
Mas yang jibu mas paso akbaran wona zachi edena gbaram samta
subo jona jina nyento hukuva mon papa mo so asignal tawa mo fifikan gboy soto de dia kem le doa.
New things are happening every day in this church, that there is improvement in every area of their lives, especially the kids. Every Sunday, they bring in more kids. And that is fantastic.
Welcome back, everybody. As you're finding your seats and we're getting ready for the next section of training, it reminded me of my first youth ministry training that I ever went to. Maybe this is your first training as well. Mine was way back in 1998, forever ago. It was a training by the guy of the name of Doug Fields, and he was already old back then. I'm telling you. Oh, hey, Doug, Jess, how are you guys? I didn't even see you here.
Josh, real nice. Come on.
Let me tell you about the next speaker. Her name is Jessica Sanchez, and she is one of my dear friends. She's also been a part of the Download Youth Ministry podcast for a long time. We got to serve on the same church staff for years, and I know her heart for ministry. She's been a speaker at the National Youth Workers Convention, and we finally stole her away to work at Download Youth Ministry. She's a gem. Hey, Jess, tell everybody about your first volunteer youth ministry training.
Well, believe it or not, it was actually one that Doug Field hosted in maybe 2003 or 4, and he was actually pretty old back then too.
Oh, come on, you guys are
1-2 punch.
Okay, look, Jess, Josh and I often argue over who's the bigger Jessica Sanchez fan, because he thinks he is because he worked with you for a few years. I think I am because I had the privilege of you discipling my youngest daughter. And she's now 25 years old. She runs a mission organization. She's married. She's following Jesus. And it points back to people like you, specifically you, who showed her the ways of Jesus. and basically made up for her dad's failing. So here's the deal. Why don't you go over and get ready to speak? I'm going to introduce you. Jessica Sanchez, you maybe haven't heard of her like you have the other speakers, but you will today because she's got great content and amazing heart. She's a youth ministry veteran of over 20 years. She's got a master's in spiritual formation. And ever since she joined the Download Youth Ministry team, Josh actually likes Jesus. So it's been a great thing. We're excited for you to get to know Jessica in her International Day Volunteer Youth Ministry Training debut. Jessica Sanchez.
Well, it's really an honor to be with you, to consider what it looks like to shepherd students. And you might be thinking, shepherding, that's an odd choice of word. Culturally, I kind of agree. So simply put, let's say it like this. Shepherding equals leading students to Jesus. And while it may sound simple, we all know it's difficult because teenagers have their own thoughts and desires. But thankfully, we have the Good Shepherd, Jesus, who modeled what a loving and effective shepherd does. So let's consider how Jesus shepherded others and how that might influence our leadership. Here's what we see Jesus do in his ministry. Jesus asked questions and he welcomed questions. The Gospels record 307 questions that Jesus asked. Questions like, what do you want me to do for you? Do you want to get well? Do you love me? Jesus asked questions not for his own benefit. He was God. He knew the answers. His masterful questions awakened people's awareness of themselves and of him. Jesus' questions didn't simply target an exchange of information. He was going after transformation. His questions showed his genuine interest in people, and he welcomed questions from others. I love when doubting Thomas refuses to believe that Jesus is actually resurrected unless he touches Jesus' wounds. And what does Jesus do with Thomas's doubt? He invites him, filled with questions and doubt, to touch his hands and his side so he could confirm that he was really Jesus. Jesus is saying, I hear that question, a question that reveals your doubt, and I'll embrace it in a very personal way. And if you're like me, asking great questions doesn't come very naturally. And honestly, most of the volunteers that I've worked with, maybe it's because we've been conditioned to get to the right answer rather than allow time in the discovery process, which can be a little uncomfortable because real life answers can involve doubt and tension. But friends, it's in the discovery process where the good stuff is found. When we enter the unknown, we actually help teenagers become more aware of God and his love and his kingdom. Asking good questions, pausing, even embracing the discovery process, and allowing their difficult questions to be asked, that is where the beauty lies. Like Thomas, that's what gets him to, it's true, you really are God. And as youth workers, we get to be an inviting presence where students know they can ask questions and offer their very real answers without fear of being rejected. So let's get to the how. So you can practice this tomorrow or at your next small group. How can you do this with your students? One way is to practice what I call holy curiosity. Holy curiosity is having a strong desire to discover what God is doing in the lives of his people. And this is a skill to develop. It has definitely taken me some time to figure this one out. Holy curiosity takes practice, but the fruit that it yields in teenagers' lives is so worth your effort. When I first started in youth ministry, I thought my best asset was having the answers to students' questions. I thought that they needed a wise and educated person to warn them against the pitfalls of life and share knowledge gathered from my past to help them make better choices. And if I'm honest, that felt really good and reassuring. But while my intentions were right, I was excluding God in the process. I placed the focus of ministry on me and what I had to offer, rather than on Jesus and what he had to offer. My focus was on solving their problems rather than seeking God's leading in their life. But what I see about the way of Jesus is that he, knowing the answer to every question before he even asks it, still takes the time to ask people questions. And why? Because his questions led to discovery. So here's a couple of ways that you can practice holy curiosity the next time you're meeting with a student. As a shepherd, remind yourself before going into small group or into a time with a student, I don't have to display my wisdom and answer every question. Instead, I can pause and consider what might be going on inside of the student's mind and heart. And in my pause, I need to remember to remain curious and ask more questions. So lock that into your brain before you even enter the room. Then I can practice holy curiosity by leaving assumptions at the door. Anytime you find yourself assuming you know what God is doing, stop and beg His Spirit to guide you. Now, you may be intuitive and have great discernment, but I want to offer you this perspective. Could there be something that God wants to show a student that you actually get in the way of by jumping in prematurely and offering them this revelation yourself? I have a friend who loves going to the movies. He actually used to work in the film industry. He loves everything about it. And if there's anything that he loves more than watching movies, it's spoiling movies. We've actually made a rule in our friend group where he is not allowed to tell us about any film because he, without fail, always proceeds to tell us the entire plot before we've even had a chance to watch it. And it's the worst. We all have that friend, right? This is what you and I can find ourselves doing in the lives of teenagers when we don't practice holy curiosity. We can ruin the film for them. We tell them what's about to happen, who the good guy is, and what the resolution of the story will be. Do you and I know parts of the story because we've lived it? Probably. But something else to keep in mind is that although we have life experience, we don't know what the details are of the story that God is authoring in the life of that student. God deals with each of us so uniquely. As I've practiced this, I've been met with the most surprising results. The story rarely plays out the way that I thought that it would. So first, practice holy curiosity. Here's another way to shepherd like Jesus. Ask discovery questions. This action single-handedly changed everything about the way that I shepherd students. Just like Jesus did, don't ask questions for the sake of gathering information. It's not an interview, and it's certainly not an interrogation. Ask a question as a way to help the teenager discern what God may be doing in the ordinary and the not-so-ordinary aspects of their daily life. You know this. The best questions are open-ended. So stay away from questions that have the answers be yes, no, good, or bad. These shut down the conversation prematurely, and they leave you feeling stuck and scrambling for another, maybe lesser question to ask. While discovery questions begin with who, what, where, when, and how. These questions are usually more difficult to answer superficially. For example, a normal go-to question on a Sunday morning at church is, how was your weekend? And chances are most students will say, fine. But a better discovery question is, who did you spend time with this weekend and what did you do? It's not necessarily a spiritual question, but it is a shepherding question because it reveals your genuine interest in them and the details of their life. These types of questions also expedite you getting to better know a student. When teenagers feel like you really care about who they are, they will begin to slowly trust you. Here's another example for a small group question. You could ask, did you do your quiet time this week? It's a decent question. You care about their faith. But a better question is, what was it like for you when you did your quiet time this week? And if a student responds with, well, I didn't do it, which happens really often at my small group, a better follow-up question might be, what do you think held you back from spending time with Jesus? This question shows your authentic interest in the student's experience, rather than simply checking off a spiritual to-do list. There's power in open-ended and thoughtful questions because they allow us to find out what our students are really thinking, feeling, and experiencing, which can be so powerful for them. We aren't simply asking questions that demand a right or a wrong answer. We're actually helping teenagers be honest about their faith journey. And as you shepherd teenagers, you can then lovingly lead them to bring that same honesty to God. Your discovery questions help students come to conclusions on their own and will train them for a lifetime of personal growth and spiritual transformation that isn't dependent on you. And that is a good thing. Let me end by saying this. If you can only do one thing, please be mindful of your response to the answers that students give. The way that you respond to their answers is just as important as the questions that you ask. It's vital for teenagers to know that when it comes to explaining their experiences, there's no wrong answer. So smile. Love them with your eyes. Give them your undivided attention to make sure that you show them how much you value them. Now, shepherding students can definitely be unpredictable, but remember this: Jesus, who is your good shepherd, will be faithful to guide you as you guide others.
Way to go, Jess. Right over there cheering you on. It was so good. I knew you were going to be great. Her content is so great. She's so fabulous. Anyway, okay, I'm not going to brag about you anymore, but I'm going to brag about somebody else. Her name is Danielle. I mentioned a little bit earlier. You've met her. She's a middle school volunteer. She's 81 years old. Josh and I did rock, paper, scissors to see who got to interview her. I lost. I don't know why Josh does all the interviews. He's really good at that. But I did get to bring her onto our team. I'm the one that asked her, and she said yes. So I'm super excited for you to meet somebody who really does what you talked about, Jess. She shepherds kids. So Josh is outside with Danielle right now. I'm excited for you to meet her. Josh, take it away.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate that. Danielle, it's great to see you this morning. How are you?
I'm great.
Wonderful. Well, hey, I know that Doug really wanted to do this interview. He's stuck inside, but I voted, I said, hey, I want to do this interview. And I asked you, I said, like, who do you think is the better pastor, Doug or Josh? And they should do the interview. And you very kindly said me. So
of course.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate your vote of confidence and just confirming what we've known for years. So thank you. Danielle, you are one of our most incredible junior high volunteers in my church, in our church. And so first of all, let me just say thank you for loving teenagers, and you are a gift to our youth ministry. So let me just ask you some questions today. It's just you and me hanging out. Why did you say yes to youth ministry? And here's why I ask. You might not look like a stereotypical youth worker. Why did you say yes? Because I want more of you in our youth ministry. And so just give us your story of how you came to youth ministry.
Well, I've been involved with kids all my life, okay? It was something that as I became older, I realized that as God has given us so many gifts, one of the gifts that He has bestowed upon me is that I love kids and I love working with them, and I sort of understand them.
You do?
Before I accepted Doug's invitation, though,
You got to give him credit. Okay, fine.
I spent time praying about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm 82. I've got other things going on. I'm not really tied into commitment.
Right.
But the answer was so big always, yes, yes, yes.
I love it. And so you were invited into youth ministry. So that's a simple principle right there. Someone noticed a member of the congregation who maybe didn't look like everybody else, young, cool, all that stuff. And you are cool. And our kids adore you. And the first time I saw you doing youth ministry, you're hanging out and there's a table of junior high girls and you're leaning in and engaging and getting to know them. Like, it seems like you do have a natural rapport with teenagers. So do you have questions that you go for right away, or a technique to start a conversation? Because you're so good at it. What do you do? What's your thought process when you walk up to a table full of junior high girls?
First thing, I try to have a big smile on my face. Junior high kids, if you just have a whole room for them to stand up, they're just all different sizes.
It's true.
Not only physically, but emotionally.
Yeah.
And a lot of them aren't quite sure of themselves. So when you walk up, big smile, ask them how they're doing, where they're from, what their interests are. And they are so good at knowing whether you are honest, whether you are real. You have to also be ready for really blunt responses.
Okay.
Yeah. It wouldn't be out of the way for them to say, that's some real crazy hair you've got there,
Yep.
So I've always tried to accept them as who they are.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you can't be firm with them when they need to be firm.
Sure, yeah.
But what I've learned is that if you really, really care and you're really focused on them individually and they sense that love, they'll go with you a long ways.
That's it. One of my favorite moments is in our youth room, and you are standing around talking with the girls and whatever, and you have some cards with you. Yes. Tell me about those cards, because I think this is a pro tip from Daniil today. I've never seen another youth worker do it. You have some cards that you brought in your purse. What were those and how did it work?
I ordered these cards years ago, and I loved them so much that I kept ordering them. They have things on them. They're sort of artsy drawings on them.
Yeah, like paintings
right.
or phrases and right. Yeah.
And what's the best thing you can do today? Take a nap. That sort of thing.
Those are good words too.
And I spread those out on the table, and I say, look through them. Take your time. And they do. And they'll pick, and the one girl said, this is so strange. This is what I've needed all week.
Wow.
And she picked it up and took it with her. And they're to give to them,
Yeah. So there are different inspirational phrases, verses, funny ones, all of them on the table.
Right.
And I've seen you do this too. You're having conversations with them, you're engaging, you're laughing, but you're also maybe opening up a legitimate conversation or opening up a hurt or a pain, and you're pastoring them, you're loving them. Like, it is a master class in how to do great ministry. Daniil, you're good.
Well, years of experience helps.
That's true.
It really does.
Yeah. Now, I remember we experienced some crazy times over the summer and the spring and summer with the pandemic and coronavirus and all of that stuff. You began a letter writing campaign to the kids in our youth ministry. Now, where I come from, that's kind of old school youth ministry. We would text or we would maybe call, but you wrote postcards, and it wasn't just one or two. Tell us how many and why, and why were those important to you, and what did you hear back, and what did you feel back from those postcards? Because it was extraordinary, the effort that took too, my goodness.
My experience in dealing with kids or with people any age, I mean, from babies to old people, we like to be remembered.
One last question. Tell me about the impact that serving in youth ministry has done for you. Like, I've tried to emphasize how you have helped teenagers and unlocked conversations and caring and pastoring, but how has your heart changed? How have you grown spiritually as a result of volunteering?
Well, I got more than I gave. They love being remembered. They love not being just a face. They love hearing about Christ.
Well, Daniil, our kids will not ever forget you and the impact you're making during this pivotal moment in their life as well. So thank you for serving. I'm honored to be your favorite pastor on staff. Doug who, I think you said earlier. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I heard. And thank you. Thank you for your time today. This is awesome. We've done something that is inspired by Daniil. We have created some postcards. You're so good at this. We've created some inspirational, funny, fun postcards for you to use in your youth ministry. Go to the domain that's listed on the screen. We would love to share those with you, absolutely no cost, and continue what we see you doing so well all across the whole country. Does that sound good? Does that sound?
That sounds fantastic.
I love it. You're so good at it. We're going to create an army of Daniils all across the country, all across the world, sending postcards, encouraging teenagers in their walk with Jesus. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We love you. You're the best.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
back from the break, everybody. It's great to see you again. It's time to have a little bit of fun.
I thought I was saying we were back from the break.
I'm taking charge. I'm giving away big prizes. We're going to have a great time.
So we're giving away prizes to a location. There's over 400 locations.
This is awesome.
Everybody at the location's either going to win a new Kia Soul.
And you get a Soul, and you get a Soul.
$10 Starbucks card, a shirt off Josh's back.
Oh, this is my favorite shirt.
And Doug's toupee, super funny.
There you go.
Super funny.
He's getting hair out of your eyes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Free T-shirts from DYM Shirts. That's our shirt organization.
Okay. And
or
finally,
$75 in Twizzlers, which are my favorite candy. Which I think $75 for a whole location should be more like $200.
Oh, so we're gonna just change it right here from $75 to $200 in Twizzlers.
We can do that.
Wait,
$200.
oh, there it is. Okay,
Yeah.
now wait. $10 for Starbucks. That's
plenty.
Super generous.
Plenty. Never had a cup of coffee in my life.
I'm gonna say $25 in Starbucks to every person at every location that would win today, right?
Josh,
that's good.
That's very nice of you to
feels
spend
right.
money that you don't have.
It's easy.
All right, so let's see. Let's see who's gonna win.
Fire it up. Here we go. We're gonna go through the boxes and figure out which prize is going to win. Then will it be you? That's the real question. 3, 2,
shirt off Josh's back.
No. Hey, I refuse. No. Okay.
Don't do that.
I'm never above taking my shirt off. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm always down for that.
We don't have enough shirts for everybody, and it's very inappropriate. I love the little icon logo there, too. Okay, let's go to another winner.
Do you think people don't want to see what's under this shirt?
I don't want to see
They've
what's
never
under this
seen
shirt.
abs. They've never seen abs like this.
That's
I understand.
right.
I don't want to cause you to stumble.
You thought the coronavirus was bad.
Hurt people, hurt people.
Here we go.
Here we go. And stop.
There it is.
$100 in Twizzlers.
$200 Twizzlers to one side. Let's go to the Pick Me app.
Congratulations.
And see which church we are sending this to.
All right, so we put your churches in here right now, and we're going to find out if you win $200 in Twizzlers.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of Twizzlers.
Tubs and tubs and tubs.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
That's at least 20 tubs.
That's a lot of Twizzlers.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. This church, Ginger Creek Community Church. I like it.
Filled with people from Ireland.
If you don't have red hair, you can't come to our church. You're like, oh, sorry, you're a brunette. Step aside.
But they cross the creek and you win. All
Hope
right,
you
Ginger
like-
Creek
hope you like
Twizzlers.
Twizzlers. That was awesome.
Hey, red Twizzlers, red hair.
Red hair
for Ginger
I like
Creek.
it. What's next? Well,
Kara Powell's
Yes.
next. Do you remember the one that you were making fun of a little bit earlier?
She's
and
great.
I said she's smarter than both of us combined.
Very true.
Kara is the director of the Fuller Youth Institute. She's an author of several best-selling books in the youth ministry world. She's a dear friend of mine and
a dear friend of mine. How dare you?
Well, she's a dear friend of mine and a friend of Josh knows her. Let's put it that way.
I saw her one time at a conference.
We're thrilled to have her here. Kara, thank you so much for joining us. We won't put you on the spot to see who you like better between me and Josh, but we're thrilled that you're here. Thank you.
She likes me better.
Well, thank you, Doug and Josh, my dear friend Doug and my kind of friend Josh. It's great to be with you all thinking about how we can better love and serve the young people we care so much about. I'm particularly eager to dive into this topic about how we can build faith in an anxious world. I'm a parent of teenagers, I serve at our church, I direct the Fuller Youth Institute, and let me just say that not a day goes by that a volunteer, a leader like yourself, doesn't come to me and ask a question about mental health. We're seeing such a rise in mental health challenges in teenagers and young adults these days. Our two oldest kids are a college freshman and an 11th grader, which means I've spent much of the last several years doing a part-time job of touring college campuses. I've been to so many university campuses with our oldest two kids, and at every campus we visit, they talk about the resources they're offering to young people who are dealing with anxiety, stress, depression, even suicide. And all too often, the church remains silent. That's a problem because of how prevalent mental health challenges are for our young people today. If you're leading a group with, say, 12 students in it, about 1/3 of those students at some point in their lives will be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Yes, that's right. About 1/3 of the overall US population at some point in our lives is going to be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So if you have 12 kids, 4 of those kids have a diagnosable or will have a diagnosable anxiety disorder. And in seasons when there are things like the pandemic, when there's social isolation, the rates of mental health challenges increase. Most mental health hotlines have seen a 40% increase in people reaching out for help. And 75% of those reaching out for help are under 25. So because you care about young people, because I care about young people, we've got to talk about how to help them have faith in an anxious world. We're going to look primarily at two questions today. The first question is, why are there more mental health challenges with today's teenagers? Well, I'll be honest, as a researcher, we don't totally know. So I'm going to share 4 factors that seem to be at play, but it varies kid by kid, and you'll need to discern that with the kids that you care about. Here's the first factor that we think is involved, though, in young people's mental health challenges, and that's technology. It's interesting that there's a correlation between the widespread use of smartphones in our country and mental health challenges. Now, let me just say, I love technology. I couldn't be here with you today without this sort of technology. I'm very pro-technology, and yet it increases young people's feelings of anxiety. I went to high school a few decades ago, but when I was in high school, you know, if I missed a Friday night party, if I wasn't invited to a Friday night party, which yes, that sometimes did happen, if I wasn't invited to a Friday night party, I would maybe hear about it on Monday morning. Well, today's teenagers and young adults, they see that Friday night party that they weren't invited to unfolding in real time. No wonder they have such a fear of missing out. If I was a teenager today, I would be dealing with anxiety, I know. The second reason that there are so many mental health challenges has to do with the way that we, and I'll say we as a parent of teenagers, that we have parented and step-parented our kids. It's so tempting as a parent to put often too much pressure on our kids, or maybe even more common as a parent, we so love our kids that we don't want to see them go through tough times, and so we swoop in and rescue them, which robs them of the chance to build those muscles they need of grit and resilience. My friend and colleague at Fuller Seminary, Scott Cormode, he says that we as parents, we have 2 conflicting desires. On the one hand, we want to protect our kids from pain and suffering. And on the other hand, we want our kids to have the kind of character and growth that only comes through pain and suffering. And so it's tempting, I know I have done this. I have rescued my kids when I should have let them figure it out themselves. So part of why we think there are more mental health challenges today is because of technology and because of our parenting. It's also because of our busyness. Lisa D'Amour is a researcher who studied adolescents, especially girls, and especially anxiety. And she recommends that the typical teenager have about 25% of their calendar be unstructured downtime. I'm guessing most of the teenagers you know don't have that kind of schedule. So our busyness increases our stress. And then lastly, our brain biology. The brain's an organ, like our kidneys are an organ, our lungs are an organ, and sometimes we need therapeutic intervention. Sometimes we need prescription medicine to help restore our brains to their normal equilibrium. So these are some of the reasons why mental health challenges are increasing in the kids we care about. Let's look to an equally important question. How should we respond if we're starting to suspect that a young person, a teenager that we care about is overly stressed? What should we do? Well, first off, don't make the mistake of not talking about it. I urge you, please have the courage to be more proactive than that. Don't worry, don't give in to the fear that if I bring it up, it's gonna make it worse. Actually, as we've talked to a host of therapists and theologians and Bible teachers, pastors and volunteers like yourself, they've helped us understand that there's 5 steps that we should take, 5 ways that we can respond to kids that we're worried about who might be overly anxious. And the first one is to bring it up by asking them this question. Can you rate your anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst? That's a wonderful question to ask actually anybody of any age, but especially our young people. On a scale of 1 to 10, how anxious are you? If it's a 1 to a 3, it's no big deal. A 4 or 5 is handleable. A 6 or above is when you want to start thinking about what additional support do I want to surround this young person with? Other friends, adults, maybe a therapist. There was a time about a month ago, there was a 48-hour period where I was hearing so much about suicide. I was hearing about so many teenagers and young adults who were dying by suicide, pastors and volunteers like yourselves who were asking me and others questions about suicide. It just seemed like there was this surge in suicides. And so Dave and I that night, as we tucked in our 3 kids, we still tuck them in one at a time, even though they stay up later than us. As we tucked them in, we just looked them in the eye and said, hey, how are you doing? How are you really doing? You can talk to us about anything. It's so important that we take initiative and ask these kinds of questions with the kids we care about. The B stands for breathe. You know, my whole life, I've heard the importance of breathing deeply, and I never understood why. But when we breathe deeply, when we help kids breathe deeply, we send a signal to their brain and their hearts that they can both slow down. It's like God's brake pedal for us. So we want to help our kids breathe. The C is to help our kids center on a helpful truth or phrase. In our family, that's the phrase Emmanuel, God is with us. And so if our kids are going through something tough, I'll often text them, Emmanuel, hey, I'm praying for you. It could be a lyric from a worship song, it could be a scripture verse, it could be any kind of phrase or poem, but help that kid figure out what's something that they can identify ahead of time that they can repeat mentally, internally when they feel stressed. Point D is develop that team. Develop a team of other peers and other adults. This is, again, maybe where a therapist comes into play. If you don't know how to find a good therapist, ask around at your church, ask the nearest school. They often have some great recommendations, but we're not meant to go through anything alone, especially mental health challenges. And then E is to empower through empathy. Yes, absolutely, sit with our kids in their pain, but then also empower them to take a next step. I love this phrase from Lisa D'Amour. She offers it, and it's so helpful in talking with kids about anything, to say, oh, that stinks, that's hard, oh, that's tough, I'd be disappointed too. But then to say, I think you can handle it. Or what do you need from me to move forward? Or what's your plan for taking a next step? Yes, we empathize, but then we also empower. Those are the A, B, C, D, E's of responding to kids dealing with mental health. The city of Palo Alto in Northern California experienced a surge of suicides a few years ago. It was a cover story in the Atlantic. And so the city of Palo Alto wisely decided to hire a security guard to sit on the train tracks to prevent kids from stepping in front of trains, because that's how they were dying by suicide. I'm glad the city has done that, but here's what I wish and pray will happen, is that it's not just the city that's gonna be at those train tracks stopping kids, it's gonna be the church. It's gonna be you and me on those train tracks. And we're gonna be a quarter mile ahead, intervening earlier, and a quarter mile before that. The church is gonna have multiple places to intervene and love kids, empathize with them, pray with them, so that together we can see faith build in our anxious world. Thanks.
Thanks, Kara. That was terrific. I know that's going to be so thought-provoking for small group leaders and volunteers all over watching this right now. And you might want to discuss this with somebody. I know I do. So we want to give you a few minutes right now to share with those around you some of your learnings, thoughts, and process the lesson that we've just heard. Well, welcome back, everybody. This has been an incredible day already, and boy, do we have a treat coming up next. I am terrified of our next guest. His name is Mark Munoz. He's a UFC fighter, and he's actually a really good friend of mine. In full disclosure, Mark had his kids in my youth group, and my son goes to his wrestling camp. He's an unbelievable athlete and a great guy, although his Donkey Kong fists of fury are terrifying. So to do this interview, I'm going to wear some headgear to make sure that I remain safe. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing well, man.
Good, man, good. I feel great. I feel safer now. You can't smile when I say that. You're
I can't
too
take
happy.
you serious in that headgear.
All right, let me take it off. Fine, I see how it is. Dude, thank you for being a part of the National Day of Training. It's so cool to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
For those people who have never seen you fight before or don't know who you are, we're gonna play some fun highlights of you beating other people to a pulp. So that'll be fun. They can enjoy that right now while we're talking.
All right.
Mark, you are also a gentle giant. You have a great heart, and a big part of your heart is caring for kids that are being bullied.
Yeah.
So we just heard from Kara about anxiety and depression and the pains that students are going through. And maybe underneath that for some of them is they're being bullied, maybe in person or online. Tell me a little bit about your heart. Why is this important to you? And then I'll ask you some specific questions.
I because of bullying, I'm actually who I am today.
Oh, really?
So I'll tell you a little story about me. I in 8th grade, I got a pair of Jordans for Christmas, and I couldn't believe I had a pair of Jordans, and put them on and went to school. And as I walked home, that's when it happened. That's when I got bullied, physically bullied.
Wow.
By 5 guys, and they held me down and took my shoes.
Wow.
So it happened to me, and so I shared my story with a guy, and he says, "Hey man, you need to learn how to wrestle." And I'm, "Nah, man." And I said to him, I said, "Nah, you guys wear tight leotards and touch each other in funny places, man. I'm good with that."
No more. No.
You know, I was like, I'm good. And he goes, "What? I bet you I could take you down in 10 seconds. I said, "Yeah, right. Dude, you're barely 100 pounds, 5 foot nothing."
Yeah.
I'm 5'5", 150 pounds at the time, right? And I said, "There's no way you're gonna take me down." So I break down in my stance, and I'm wiggling my fingers like I'm gonna do magic to him or something, right? And he shoots in, grabs both my legs, picks me up, and slams me on my back, and I've been wearing a tight leotard ever since,
And
right?
you said, "I want to do this to other people."
I was like, I want that, you know? So that's how I got into it. And the reason why I love it is because I'm a product of rising above that adversity. And that 8th grade year, it was a big year for me because I got bullied and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior that year. Awesome. So just all in all, just from there, looking back at it, I'm thankful that it happened to me.
Yeah.
Because
it shaped forever who you are, and it also cemented the importance of your faith. And volunteer youth workers and people who cared about you and surrounded you with some strength, I'm sure, during that time as well.
That's right.
What do you think volunteers can do? Like, let's say that they find out that one of the kids in their small group is being bullied, that they're experiencing verbal, physical, or online, abuse in this way. Like, is there something that a volunteer can do when they first hear something like that?
Yeah, I think a volunteer should know what bully actually really is. And so there's 4 types of bullying.
Okay.
There's verbal bullying. Like I said, it's anything that comes out of your mouth that's a threat or insult. 2, there's physical bullying, laying your hands on somebody, inflicting physical harm. There's social bullying, which is leaving somebody out of a group activity because you're too cool, or spreading rumors about somebody to taint their reputation. And then 4thly, there's cyberbullying. That's anything that happens behind a screen, which is forums on social media or what have you. So that stuff, it's true. It happens. It's present here today. And so for volunteer workers to know what that actually is, because there's a difference between being bullied and being mean. Somebody can just be mean.
Yeah, this is a really important part. I'm glad you're saying this.
It's a really important part because somebody can be mean, but it only happens like once. In a long time, and
bullying is that consistent,
ongoing behavior to threaten or insult or hurt somebody.
Yeah.
You know?
Because I remember even saying naively as a youth worker and as a dad, I even said like, oh yeah, bullying, that's not even a thing. Like, that's what we used to call growing up.
Yeah.
And I kind of dismissed bullying, to be honest, when there kind of became more awareness to it.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't think it was that big of a deal. It kind of was like, this is normal.
Yeah.
And now I understand it so much more as my kids have experienced it as a dad.
Yeah.
And I've now seen it so pervasive as a youth worker.
Yeah.
It is destroying our kids. And so you're saying a volunteer can make a huge difference. Don't ignore it. Don't minimize it.
No.
Don't pretend it's not there.
Yep.
Say something, do something, and be strong for the person who's being attacked.
Yeah, exactly. And if they know the kind of the warning signs of it, if they know actually what.
Yeah, give us
bullying,
some clues. That'd be really helpful.
I mean, it's like I said, those 4 types of bullying. If you see it happening, if you see someone getting bullied, or even go up to the bully and talk to him, because usually when a bully bullies, there's something going on in their life.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and so.
Do you think a small group leader, do they need a question? Can they just come out and say, hey, have any of you been bullied this week? Or like, you think there's, is it free to talk about like that with your, that open about it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, because it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens.
And it's happening with your kids.
Oh, it's happening right now. You know, and so don't feel that you're above it, because I felt like I was above it.
Yeah.
And then there you go, I got bullied.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, I saw people around campus getting bullied every day.
Yeah.
And I was like, it'll never happen to me. And then boom, it happened to me. And I mean, for me, it was serious, because I laid in a pool of my own blood, battered, bruised, and beaten, you know, and so that you know, like I said, changed my life, you know, and so I pray and I hope that doesn't happen to somebody else, but if it does happen, I'm here today to tell you that there's hope and that they can rise above it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the power of a small group leader. That's the power of an adult who cares for students. That's the power of an adult who's not afraid to bring it up.
That's right.
Or when you see something and you're like, something's not right. Or they mentioned this prayer request, but it sounds like they're being bullied.
Yep.
To dive into that area that you might be uncomfortable with and see if there's something more there, and then do something about it.
That's right. That year in the 8th grade was big for me, because
no kidding. Your whole life changed.
Yeah, my whole life changed. I got saved, went to a camp, got saved, and started wrestling, and got bullied. That's
awesome.
all in that same year.
I love that even out of that difficult time, that desperate time when you had to be the lowest of the lows, God reached in, some incredible adults helped and cared for you, and who knew where your career was going to end up? It's unbelievable.
That's right.
I love it. Dude, thanks for sharing. It's been awesome having you with us today. Thanks for just introducing and challenging our leaders to deal with this important issue.
That's right.
And we're going to send it back to Doug in a second. I wish you had time to watch Mark and I wrestle, because we're going to fight right now, and we'll send it up to Doug. Here we go.
I'm starting to get sad that we're moving towards the last speaker of our training. We are so honored to have Mark Ostreicher with us again this year. Affectionately, we call him Marco. Marco is a youth ministry legend. He's the author of many youth ministry books. He's the founder and partner of Youth Cartel, where he coaches and consults youth workers around the country. He's a volunteer at his church, is a junior high small group boys leader, and he maybe has the most impressive beard in youth ministry, and also the physique of a UFC fighter. And so it's my privilege and honor to introduce you to Mark Ostreicher. Marco, thank you for being here.
You guys, I am so excited to be with you here today. I hope you're having a great day so far. And we are going to talk about these skills that need to show up in our lives as volunteer youth workers. Some of the things that I think are the most important skills. I think there's this stereotype, this archetype out there that so many of us volunteers try to live up to. We have this idea in our head that we measure ourselves against. Maybe you even have examples in your ministry of other volunteers who fit some of these, and you often feel like, if I could be more like that person in that area. And that stereotype of the perfect youth leader is somebody who's first and foremost a kid magnet. That's actually a term that I see show up sometimes in job descriptions, right? Somebody that teenagers just flock to because they're so relationally gifted and have kind of maybe even a coolness side to them. Secondly, that they're an insightful theologian, that you can parse the Bible and help kids understand the deeper truths of following Jesus. Third, that you would be a creative teaching black belt, that you know how to artfully lead a small group and get to the good stuff every single week. That you're an A-list comedian, that you can be funny and the kids laugh when you say jokes rather than groan and roll their eyes. And finally, that you're jaw-dropping party planner, that you're just so good at organizing events and fun things for teenagers. I want to suggest to you that those are nice to have, but not have to have. I'm a volunteer youth worker just like you. I lead an 8th grade guys small group at my church, and I've done so for 21 years in a row after a life of being a professional youth workers. And I want to talk to you about what I've discovered are the 2 most important skill sets for a youth worker here in the 21st century. Skill number 1, spiritual discernment. Look, here's the big truth here. Your best expression of youth ministry won't come from brilliant brainstorming, but always from tapping into God's dreams for your ministry. I will acknowledge to you, I sucked at spiritual discernment for the first 20, 30 of my years in youth ministry. It's new for me that I'm really trying to lean into the leading of God. And I'm finding this is it's like a muscle to exercise and learn how to use. And it's so critical for my success as a youth worker. This is not an invitation to sloppy ministry. I want to just suggest, like in my small group with my 8th grade boys, my worst nights in my small group are when I'm not planned. And I hear youth workers sometimes say, oh yeah, I totally wanted to, follow the Spirit's leading. I'm just going to wing it. And I want to just say that's sloppy and lazy. My second worst nights are when I'm inflexible, when I have a plan and I stick to it no matter what happens. My best nights, always, every time I have a good night with my 8th grade guys, it's when I'm planned but flexible. When I have rails to run on, but I respond to the leading of the Spirit, that's when we get to the gooey center of great youth ministry. So what does discernment look like for you and I as youth workers, particularly as volunteers? Well, I want to suggest from the Bible, we understand it's listening for the still small voice of God. We want God to speak in neon, but God seems to prefer watercolor. So often I hear just a whisper, a nudge. Sometimes I use the word a scent. And it's, when I'm working with the 8th grade boys, there's lots of scents, right? But I need to get this hint that maybe God is leading me somewhere. And again, the more I practice this, the more I exercise this, the better I get at discerning. Is that just that guy's burrito speaking? Or is that off-topic question where the good stuff is going to be? Secondly, I want to suggest that understanding discernment is about releasing control and overcoming 3 internal voices that I exercise that block God's Spirit from leading me. The first is the voice of judgment that says, I don't need to hear God's voice. The second is the voice of cynicism that says, I'm not capable of hearing God's voice. And the third is the voice of fear that says, for some reason, I'm afraid to try this because maybe I'm not good. I think I'm not good enough, or maybe God isn't good enough. And we all need to address those voices of judgment, cynicism, and fear if we want to open ourselves up to the leading of the Spirit. There is plenty, my friends, about the Holy Spirit that I don't fully understand. I really feel like I grew up in many senses in my church, a great church, but we grew up with a 2-person Trinity, and so I'm just learning so much. But I will tell you these 3 things that I know. God has dreams for your youth ministry and for every teenager in it. The Holy Spirit is already actively at work, and you and I are invited to join in. The second skill that I want to talk to you about today is contextualization. I know it's a big fancy word, but I want you to think about in what ways is my church, our youth ministry, and am I unique? Here's the big truth for this one. In an age of splintered youth culture, great youth workers have discerned an approach to ministry that is wonderfully unique to their context. You guys, my role with the Youth Cartel gives me an opportunity to speak all over the world to youth workers, and I definitely see this in the United States, but it's true everywhere I go, in Asia and South America, in Europe. Everywhere I go in the world, the best youth ministries are always weird. They have a high degree of self-awareness about their uniquenesses, and they celebrate them. I want you to fly your freak flag. I see this over and over again. Now, here is some deeply biblical logic for you guys. You are weird, and I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. You are made in the image of God, but you are unique. And your church is weird. It has a history of strengths and weaknesses and joys and sorrows and celebrations and pain points, and your ministry has uniquenesses to it. So why should that other church's youth ministry program or even that other volunteer's approach work in your context? Remember, they're weird too. So I want you to do the work of an anthropologist. Grow in self-knowledge. Understand what makes you unique, your own pain and struggle and joy and dreams and hopes, your skills and those areas that maybe aren't so strong, and also do the work to understand the uniqueness of the ministry in which God has placed you. The days of copying other ministries, that was awesome in 1986. It doesn't work anymore. So here's my recap for you. Be prepared. Lean into spiritual discernment, grow that muscle, but release control and listen for the whisper of God. And then secondly, be yourself and be smart about your unique context. Get ready to hoist that freak flag. God bless you all.
I am so grateful for Marco's ministry, and I'm grateful for you too, that you would spend time with us. We've been honored to be able to provide this training for you and for volunteers literally around the world. It's been so good, and I've learned a lot, and I hope you have too. And for those of you that are in Guam or any church in South Dakota, know that pizza is on its way to your site, compliments of Download Youth Ministry. And we would love to hear your thoughts about our time together. We want to keep making this national training event better and better for volunteers for years to come. So would you do this? Would you mind going to the website that you see on the screen below and fill out a little survey? It won't take you very long at all. And as a way of us saying thank you for giving us your feedback, we're going to send you a link that includes every speaker's interview that we didn't have the time to show you today. They're great interviews, and it's just our way of saying thanks. And we appreciate you being a part of that.
Oh, man, this is it, right?
Josh.
We're at the finish line.
Okay.
Wow.
What do you think? Did you have a good time?
It was awesome. Did you?
Absolutely.
Good. So good. What a great day. Well, hey, in our church, we end our services with a benediction. And honestly, it's kind of new to me because when I was in church growing up, we would just get out of there as fast as we could and go straight to hometown buffet. I bet you couldn't tell. But here's the thing. A benediction is simply a closing prayer, a blessing that has become really meaningful to me in this new season. So if you want to, I'd invite you to participate. Put your hands out to receive this blessing and close your eyes. Let's pray. In Ephesians chapter 3, verses 20 and 21, it says, "Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we, the youth workers all across the world, far more than we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be the glory in our churches and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, especially for this generation of teenagers, forever and ever. Amen."
Amen. Amen. Thanks, everybody.